Welcome back to Checkmate with Blake. Today we're going to be talking about the Caro-Kann. The Caro-Kann opening is a very popular opening against e4. Why you would play the Caro-Kann is if you learn this opening, the Caro-Kann against e4, you don't have to learn how to play against the Italian or other e4 openings. You just learn your variations and that's it. What's even better is in this video, I've narrowed it down to 3 variations of the Caro-Kann that you have to learn, and just 3. If you learn these 3 variations, at best, white will be equal with perfect play, or have a very, very negligible advantage. What's even better is if white does not play into these 3 variations that I'm about to show you, you will actually be winning out of the opening. So we'll go ahead and get right into this video. As always, with all these opening videos, it's based on my personal experience, along with current theory on the Caro-Kann, and with using deep engine analysis to come up with the best lines that are very solid and allow a lot of tactical chances for you to have a very fun game. If you find this video enjoyable, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow, and we'll get right into the video. The Caro-Kann starts after the move e4. We go c6, and then after they usually play this move d4 because obviously it's principled to try and take the center. And then, as you can tell, white is actually controlling the center with the pawns already. Now you strike with this move d5, and now we are officially in the Caro-Kann defense. Again, why would you play this opening, especially for the beginners here? Of course, white has to make a move. Actually, white has to play one of these moves. They have to either push the pawn. They can consider taking it, although it's not a very good option. They can also develop the knight to one of these squares, maybe bring the bishop out, but they have to make a decision. Because if they do nothing, if they just develop normally, go, for example, knight f3, you take the pawn, and as I said in the intro, you're already winning. You're at 0.7 on move 3, so you're already winning. So obviously they have to respond to one of your moves, which this is why you would play the Caro-Kann, because it takes white out of theory. They have to play into your variations, which you're going to be prepared for, especially after this video. So the first things we'll cover, and I just want to briefly cover this. I said 3 variations. There's technically 4, but I'm saying there's 3 because this one, it doesn't take any time. It's not an obvious choice. It's actually something white really should not do. So of course here, in this position, if they decide to take your pawn, you take back, and this is a horrible decision for white. Because what they've done, if you just notice, you have an open C file, which once we get a rook over here, you're going to have control of this C file, whereas theirs is not open. Also, they have a pawn here that can be a weakness, and there's no threats, right? It's a perfectly symmetrical position. So this is not really a variation. I don't even really consider this a variation that they should play. Usually after here, you might find c4. People might try to play something like a queen's gambit. But here is, again, this is even more of a reason why they cannot go down this line. Now you'll play this knight f6 just like you're kind of playing a queen's gambit decline. But notice now, after they capture the pawn, if they do decide to capture, notice this knight is centralized and actually no pawn can attack it. So it's almost like already in an outpost, right? Like if you get a pawn here, it's almost like having an outpost here. So your knight is already really strong. This pawn is actually an isolated pawn, so it's going to be very easy to attack. You're going to win this pawn at some point in the game. Again, you have that open file for your rook. Once you get a rook over here, obviously this is not a variation white should even consider, which is why I didn't even decide that this is a variation you have to know. All you have to know in this variation is you know, if they take, you take back. If they play c4, you bring the knight out. But even if they don't play c4, you know, if they play a random other move, it's a perfectly symmetrical position. There's nothing really you have to study here because there is no real main theory that white's going to play to just dominate you in this position. So I didn't even really consider this a variation you have to know because obviously you're in a great spot. The ones you have to know, right? So this move knight c3, we're actually going into my top prep right here. So this is actually my secret prep. So whether they play knight c3 or they go knight d2 or they go bishop d3, you play the same line against everything. So it's very easy. It's very easy to learn because no matter what they play, you're going to play the same thing. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to learn openings. You don't have to study them. You just play the same line, right? So let's just start with one of these knight moves. Let's go knight c3, knight d2. You'll see why it doesn't matter, why I'm not even going to show knight d2 because it doesn't matter. So you actually go ahead and capture this pawn. After they capture back, this is the move you're not going to find. So, right, so notice the 3 top moves, right? For example, knight f6 is main theory. Knight d7 is also main theory. Knight d7 is actually designed to get this knight here so that if you trade off, you can just capture back with the knight. Like if you just play a random move, something like this. Let's just say they captured. Obviously, that's why you play knight d7. It's actually to support that knight to contest the center. Likewise, other moves like bishop f5 are very common. This is very, very known theory, right? So you're just, these are what's common. Now, what I'm going to show you is something that's not as common, but it's what I recommend because I think it's easy to play. I think it cuts out a lot of theory, and it's actually just this move, pawn g6. Pawn g6 is just designed, just go ahead and get your bishop fianchettoed, cuts out all the theory. Let's just say they develop normally. You put your bishop here, and you already are attacking this pawn. You've already got threats. In fact, c5, not immediately, of course, because this knight will capture, but c5 is already, an advantage of this position, right? Because you could trade the queens, they can't castle, and your bishop is super strong. So I'm just pointing out some of these dark squares that you have great control over, and specifically this diagonal. So let's just say they develop normally. You might find moves such as bishop e3. You may find a move like here, but let's just say bishop e3. I think that's a common move you might find. Of course, bishop c4 is the best, but it doesn't really change our theory here. We're just, because this is almost like a system. It's very easy to play. You don't have to worry about, memorizing things. Now, what I recommend here is actually bringing this knight out. Although, again, you have options, but I actually recommend just going ahead and playing knight f6, immediately contesting the center. And another advantage of having this bishop fianchettoed here is that if they take now versus if we go back, picture, this pawn back here, the bishop here, in the main line theory, which is what most people play, when they play knight f6 and they capture, now you have doubled pawns. You have one of the doubled pawns. But here, of course, when they capture, you have the choice of actually taking with the bishop or taking with the pawn. The best move is to take with the pawn. Now, I know I told you we're not doubling our pawns here, so why would I say to play this? Well, it's because it actually controls this knight, and if they were to move the knight, of course, f5, notice now, is the second top move. f5 is actually the top move here, or it's trying to figure it out, but it's one of the best moves. That's why you can actually be okay with doubling the pawns, is because then once they move this knight out of the way, f5 becomes a strong option, again, reinstating the threat against this pawn. And actually now we are threatening to capture it, which is why when the knight moved here, it's actually f5 is even stronger. But, of course, they don't have to move the knight right away. They can just go ahead and develop, such as bishop e2. Let's just say castles and castles. And here, if you just stop and you look at the position, what you find is this pawn, again, is a weakness. And also notice f5 is still one of the top moves. It's very easy to play. You can actually just go ahead and develop your pieces. You have no real threats, right? Like, there's no issue you have in this possession. So if you are not an opening player, well, you've reached your goal, because there's no opening. I mean, you've got a solid position here that you can play. And now if you love playing middle games and end games, you have no real weaknesses. Furthermore, this pawn actually does a good job at kind of controlling this square, which maybe you want to bring a knight out, just going knight d7, swing this knight over and get the knight here. Like, let's just say a random move. You may be able to picture, even if they were to play such something to try and stop this. So I was going to say like bishop c4, but of course you could just capture it. But let's just pretend you couldn't capture it on bishop c4. This move is actually still reasonable. Of course, saying it's a miss because we could have captured the bishop. But I'm saying in this position, as you can tell, white's up 0.12. You have a very strong knight here. f5 is still in the question. So you have no real issues. So this is obviously a very playable line. Of course, I wanted to show you all what happens if you take back with the bishop. I would say taking back with the bishop is a little more risky. Of course, it says it's an excellent move, so there's nothing wrong with it. It's a little more risky. Of course, what it does is you don't double your pawns, and you keep this pressure on this here, and you kind of also preserve the ideas for such as e5, but more importantly, if they play bishop c4, at some point we're actually going to play e6. Okay, so let's just say castles and castles. e6 is actually a strong idea, I think, and even in this position, of course, there's no rush to. So here you'll just go ahead and develop your knight, and there's no real concerns. Again, same kind of thing. e5 is always in the question. You can always try and get that move off. Like, let's just say a random move happens. Of course, look, e5 is actually one of the top moves. c5 as well, with this knight being here. So those are your two options, and why this move. We don't even have to cover a ton of these deep prep, because there's not a lot of mainline theory about this. In fact, white may play a lot of different lines, but all you have to know is just, capture this pawn, and then fianchetto the bishop, develop the knight, and castle. It's very easy to play. You cut out a lot of theory. Really quick, we'll go ahead and cover this, bishop d3. Notice it says it's a good move, because it definitely is a little worse than the other line, because now after you capture and go down the same move with g6, let's just say they bring the knight out, same idea. We actually bring the knight out first before we fianchetto, and we're already attacking this bishop. Notice the second best move is actually to drop the bishop back. Of course, most of the time they're going to just actually develop, which is the best move, and try and protect it. But for example, after this captures and here, you don't have to worry about doubling the pawns, right? Because your knight's already developed and gone. So now this is actually way more advantageous for you. In fact, f5, things like that are going to be really strong ideas. Let's just say castles and castles. Actually, h3 is what it recommends. Notice you have bishop f5. You have the same exact knight move. You can ring the rook out. Again, this is even easier to play. So if you want to cut out main theory, this is even easier. And I would recommend going down this line too. So what you'll notice is by this move g6, we actually cut out all three of some of the top some of the top 3 moves. These are things people may play. Really quickly, I want to cover 2 of the other ideas. The other 2 variations. So again, I counted this as 1 variation, even though this is 3 different moves. That's the great thing about G6 is you cut out 3 entire variations and you just make them 1 because it's all the same moves. So some of the other ideas though that you might find, the most common is probably to push this pawn. This is called the advanced variation. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this one because there's so much theory already posted about this. It's not a lot of new theory, but the move you play is bishop f5. You get the bishop outside of the pawn chain. The reason for that is we're going to play e6, and once we play e6, our bishop is in a good spot. Like, right, if you had, let's just look at the alternative. Like, let's say we played e6 here. Notice our bishop is just staring at granite. It's not really doing anything. Versus playing bishop f5, once we play e6, the bishop has a role. And what's easy about this line is if they ever go here to trade off the bishop, which a lot of times people will. This is, again, notice it's a book move. You will trade the bishop. After they take back, you'll close your pawn chain. No problems. You have no issues at all. It's going to be a very, very easy game for you to play. You've got c5. You could even go with the same idea, g6, although it is much weaker now. So you have c5, get your bishops out. Even, putting the knight on a square like this is reasonable. But, of course, as you can tell, there's not a lot of stuff you have to know here because there's no real threats against you, and you have a very solid pawn chain. So if they ever bring the bishop out, you trade it. Ever go to bishop d3, you trade it. It's very easy, very simple to understand. A little trick people play is h4 because after you generally close the pawn chain, they actually win with this move pawn g4 because if you go back, notice it's trapped, and if you go forward, it's actually still trapped this way. So don't fall for that. If they play h4, you play h5. You further control this center here. An alternative is h6, but I like h5. h5 goes ahead and kind of contests and further controls this square here. Again, if they ever go here, you know what to do. You take it, and you just go ahead and play this move here, and you have no real issues. So I just wanted to briefly cover h4, h5, just to kind of give you an idea of it. What you might find, though, is just like knight f3, you go ahead and, again, close the pawn chain. That's pretty much your automatic second move. And let's just say bishop e2. Now you consider c5, trying to contest the center. Usually you'll find c3. This should make a lot of sense why why I'm not spending a ton of time on it. It's just because there's not a lot of things. It's not very complicated here. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the top moves, knight c6, go ahead and attack, further pressure this pawn is very reasonable. But you don't even have to do that. You can also just consider a slow move like bishop e7. You have no real concerns. So this is just something I wanted to kind of present to you guys. Let's just say bishop e7 and castles. There's really nothing to worry about. You can even consider this move, which is kind of strange, because if they capture, you actually kind of open up this attack on the king, which may not look like much. But if you follow my channel, you'll know that these are the kind of weaknesses you want to create, because even though you have these doubled pawns from just making some random moves, a move like this all of a sudden creates a lot of pressure. Of course, in this exact position, it is defendable with a move like here. But this is not a favorite. I mean, if I was playing white, I wouldn't want to be so defensive. I mean, this rook's trapped in here, and you have a great position. So I just wanted to briefly cover that. Again, I didn't want to spend a ton of time with this move, bishop f5, because this is kind of main theory. But if you want, I can post more, more in depth on it if it's something that you want to see. The last thing, though, is actually called the fantasy variation, which is this move, pawn f3. And a lot of players, specifically advanced players, will play the fantasy variation against the Caro-Kann because it's actually a very reputable line. However, I've got a line that just completely crushes it. There's so many tactical things here. So what you do is you capture, and after they capture back, you throw e5 in. e5 immediately contests the center. Of course, if they were to capture, you can consider going and trading where they can't castle, but actually the best move is queen h4. And you're going to notice a trend here. Queen h4 is the best. Queen h4 goes here. Obviously, if they were to play something like this, you're going to take with check. You're actually completely crushing. I mean, look at the engine. You're up 2. And if they go here, they actually get mated. So they can't, they have to be very, very careful in this line. Of course, if they were to go here, it's even worse. If they play g3, you take here with a check, and you actually fork, and you win the rook. They can't actually protect this rook. If you think, well, maybe they're going to go queen e2, well, you'll still win the rook. So, and you're still actually threatening the knight already, and threatening this pawn, once after the development happens of some of these pieces. So they can't take the pawn, right? So they might try other things, like some of the things you might find would be like knight f3. That's a very reasonable one. Knight f3 is actually the best move, so I'll save that for last. They might try something like bishop e3. Notice queen h4 still works. If they try to go ahead and block with the bishop, you still take with a check, and you're still winning again. If they ever go here, you'll just trade down. It's more accurate right there. So obviously they can't go here and they can't take. If they ever go, if you may be thinking, why don't they push either? So if they push, you still have queen h4. Queen h4 pretty much crushes in all these positions, of course, because notice the best move is king e2, king d2. Again, they can never block here because, as I said before, you'll take and you'll win the rook. So you're winning this pawn pretty much automatically, and you're already taking away their castling right. So you're already crushing if they try and push. So again, the move that I wanted to cover is actually this move, knight f3, which is the best move, in which you will take it, and after they played bishop c4, which is the strongest, I'll go ahead and show again. If they take here, you still have queen h4. You always have queen h4, so that's why you're playing this e5 move, is to have queen h4. And you're already crushing, so I won't keep showing the same line over and over. So instead, they might play this move bishop c4. This is the only part in the video where you really just have to know these moves if you go down this line. You need to play knight d7. If they ever go for this attack, where they're trying to attack this pawn, you always have this move knight e5. After they drop back, you just go bishop e7, attacking this. They have to drop back. It's their best move, knight f3, and you're perfectly fine. You have no issues. You just have to remember, knight d7 followed by knight e5. You just have to remember those two moves. Of course, they may not go down that exact line, so you might go something like this. And if they ever try, again, if they ever go for this move, you always have this idea here. So there's not a ton of issues to cover. If they ever push this pawn going e5, you can always just go d5 here, and you're fine. You have no issues here. So I just wanted you to know knight d7 and knight e5. Those are the two moves you have to know. Let's see what else I wanted to try and cover here. After this move, yeah, so I covered this line, and I covered if they push. I guess, yeah, the one I didn't cover is if they go here, and I take, and they take back with the queen. What you'll actually do is you'll trade the queens away, and you'll just play a normal game. You'll develop here. Notice if they ever push, you'll go here. So you have no concerns. So yeah, if they ever take with the queen, you just capture back, and you just go ahead and develop normally. So I'm not going to go a ton in depth with that either. Thank you all for watching. I hope you found this video pretty enjoyable. If there's anything that was confusing or you need more info on, just leave it in the comments and I'll do my best to get an answer for you or a new video for you on it. If you found this video helpful and you liked it, leave a like or go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow a lot. And if there's anything you want to see, on the next video, leave a comment below and I'll make personalized videos for you guys as soon as I can. Thank you all for watching.